What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Crush City Territory. I'm Chandler Rome, joined as always by Tyler Stafford, and sometimes we're joined by Josh Reddick. Today, we upgraded in the Josh department. We have Josh Miller, the Astros pitching coach, starting a tradition, I think, Josh, because last year we had you on about a week before pitchers and catchers reported to preview the pitching staff. You kindly agreed to do it again. It was a good year for you guys pitching wise last year. So I'm gonna credit Crush City Territory with the success that you guys had pitching wise last year.
Okay. Happy to talk to you guys again. Have some exciting pitchers in camp here that'll get started next week. So we'll put credit where credit is due. Thank you guys to getting us off on a good foot last year.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that Josh is at Dyken Park right now. He's outfitted. He's dressed like a coach. He's dressed like he's been working today. He's in the coach's office, just coming off the field. You've had a few guys in throwing bullpens, throwing live BPs. So things have really gotten started already, Josh. I think that's the misconception that some people have is that you guys, it's not one of these things where these guys roll off their couch, go to West Palm, and they're going to throw their first bullpens. Like this stuff starts very early. Kind of give us a sense of where some of these guys are in their ramp ups and kind of what going to West Palm, like what transitions will be made then.
Yeah, the game's changed quite a bit. Even back when I was playing in the minor leagues 20, 25 years ago, you had to get an off-season job. You couldn't really train year-round. It was a different animal, and things have started to become trend more like it's a year-round thing for these guys. They put in a ton of time training, keeping their body right, and there's different thoughts to how you keep the arm going in the off-season to get it ready for next season. There's really not much downtime, and we've had a good crew of guys here at the ballpark that have stayed in the Houston area. And we, open up the clubhouse and the complex to them. And, we're here to, help guide them through the preparation process so they can train appropriately and be ready for spring. The guys are usually on a structured program where they might play catch a couple times a week after the season, keep the arm moving, and then they, add some volume, some intensity to the throwing sessions. They start throwing off the mound sometime in December or early January. And we're here. We have our bullpen catchers, Javier Bracamate, Caleb Nunez are local. I'm local. Joe Espada, the manager's local. A couple other coaches, Tommy Kawamura, Jason Bell. We all come in and help the guys and provide anything they need to get them ready for spring. Most of these guys are ready to face hitters. We started that this week. Some guys, throwing pitches from the mound here at Dyken Park to hitters, and we'll transition into that in West Palm, and then the games are right around the corner. So excited about the group we've had here and the group that have been training abroad at their homes, and excited to get started at spring training.
When guys are coming back, you haven't seen them in a couple of months, and you're getting ready for spring training. Obviously, I'm assuming they're not, throwing max effort or anything yet. Like, what are you as a coach looking for to just see that progress is where you want it to be, or how can you tell somebody's had a good off season?
Well, everybody's a little bit different. One person might need to train differently than another. Some people can take more time off. Some people need to keep the arm moving. Everybody's, we're in constant communication of giving a roadmap or a game plan on things that, may have went really well that we want to continue doing going into next year, or some things that need to be shored up a little bit and have a little bit of a plan that they can tackle with their off-season training. We don't really like it if they're going, redlining in December, and using some of that energy and effort and maybe a little too soon in the calendar. But we want them peaking at the right times, and I think it's reasonable to not set expectations super high. We don't want to see Hunter Brown throwing 99 his first spring start here in a few weeks. But you got checkpoints and mile markers along the way that you want to see, and you want to see hit, and you want to see some things tackled, like maybe it's another pitch or command of a certain pitch, or maybe a small delivery tweak that all these guys are tuned to, and they put the work in. And it's something that it's my job and our new assistant pitching coach Ethan Katz's job to stay in contact with these guys and answer any questions and provide any feedback that we can.
I'm glad you brought up Ethan because I wanted to get there before we get to the guys on the pitching staff. Obviously, a lot of turnover this offseason on the pitching side. Obviously, Bill Murphy, now the lead pitching coach of the Pirates. Congratulations to him again. I know, Josh, you and Murph worked together for so long. I know that had to be thrilling for you to see him get that promotion. But as he exits, Ethan comes in. We've had Ethan on the pod before. He spoke very glowingly of you, Josh, about the interview process and how that went. I'm curious, as you're going through that process and you and Ethan start to talk, are you guys, is it more that you guys see things the same way, you're using the same words, same languages, or is it some things that maybe he saw a little bit different that you opened your eyes to, and maybe there's a little bit of a fresher perspective coming in? Just give us a little bit of an insight as to what it's been like early on working with Ethan.
Sure. Like you said, Murph and I, very close. We worked together for a long time, going back to the minor leagues. He's an integral part of the pitching success that we've had here throughout the system, including the big leagues the last handful of years. I'm excited to see him, go and grow with a good pitching staff over in Pittsburgh. Him and I are close, and I expect to remain close with him going forward, and wish him the best. The interview process was pretty long, and we talked to quite a few candidates, but Ethan Katz stood out as, a guy that has worked with high-level pitchers in the past at the major league level. Is very, very smart, attuned to, pitching vernacular. He can speak the analytics. He knows his stuff. Had time in San Francisco, got up to the big leagues with them, and then ran the White Sox pitching department for the last handful of years. And we just felt really good about him as a person, about his knowledge base. We're still in a get to know you type scenario. But him and I have been working very closely, and, he's, made calls and spoken with all of our players on the roster. And we're looking forward to get in uniform and get our turfs on the field and get up and running in West Palm.
Don't get Josh Reddick going about needing to wear your cleats around. That's all he says you need to do. That's the last part of getting in baseball shape. He talks about how hard it is to wear cleats for 3 hours.
It is. It's something I always said that, to get ready for spring training for a pitcher, you should, get up and then go to the mall and run a lap and then walk around for like 4 or 5 hours. Mm-hmm. And, that's the life of a pitcher. At least it used to be back in the day. We don't make the guys really shag BP anymore, so it's more individual focus. Get the body, get their arm ready for the season. But
no more BP after last year. We're gonna avoid that.
That would be good.
Sounds like we need a field trip to the Galleria and just get everybody out on the ice rink, get the hearts going.
That would add another element of danger here. I'm not a good ice skater, but I have seen many people take a spill.
Yeah.
The turnover is not limited, obviously, to the coaching staff. Dana made no excuse. Dana made no way to hide it from the beginning of the offseason. His focus was pitching, and they have given you a lot of new faces, a lot of new arms. In general, I'm curious, when there is such a stated directive in the offseason of we are going to go sign a bunch of pitchers, obviously Dana's the one making the final call. He constructs the roster, but how much are you involved maybe in the process of, does Dana send you, hey, we're looking at this guy, we're talking about maybe trading for this guy? Or is it a situation where you see it like we see it of, oh, they signed this guy, like, let me go look at his video, let me see what we got here? Or is it kind of a blend of both?
It's a blend of both, but most of the time, Dana's going to clue Joe and I into any type of high-level decisions that are bound to be made. We got a ton of smart guys that work in the office and look through this stuff, and we communicate with them often and, give our input, give our thoughts. Sometimes they're adhered to, sometimes they're not, but we're all part of the equation that goes into making these decisions. And ultimately it's Dana and Joe and they make the calls on the high level roster decisions, but they take our input for sure. I've been, given quite a few guys to look at in my tenure here and feel good about the guys that we've acquired this offseason, and we'll get our first look at them here in a few weeks.
I think the one guy that you guys acquired that I think has gotten a ton of fanfare, and I think everyone is most excited to see, is Tatsuya Imai. I heard you had an interview on MLB Network Radio shortly after, and it sounded like you were as stunned that you guys landed Tatsuya Imai as everyone else was, because just had not been someone that you guys were linked to. Obviously, with the posting deadline, it created some external factors. But now that you've gotten to, Joe mentioned last week that you guys have had some Zoom calls with him, that you guys have kind of started to set his schedule a little bit, and as you've kind of started to break him down and look at the stuff, what do you think you guys have here in Tatsuya Imai?
I mean, he looks like the electric high level pitcher that can come and dominate a game. He moves very athletically. The ball jumps out of his hand. He's got some unique secondary weapons that we think will play. He commands his pitch as well. He's got some charisma and some energy about him that I think will play well here for the fans. And we're excited to get started. And again, like with Ethan Katz on the coaching staff with Tatsuya, we're still in the get to know you phase, and we'll see how the acclimation of from the NPB schedule to the MLB schedule and what that looks like. But it seems like in our early conversations, all systems are go. He's up for anything. He's willing to do what's needed and what's best for the team. And we're excited to get started with him.
All right, I want to nerd out a little. You mentioned the secondary stuff with Imai. He has a very unique slider. It seems like one of those, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like one that was more in vogue 15, 20 years ago. It's one of those sliders that it dives more than it does sweep across the zone. And it feels like recently the big secondary stuff in the big leagues is, the big sweepers, the ones that really move across the plate. How does having a slider like that change the way that you're tunneling your other pitches? Like how does his slider play differently off a fastball than, a larger like sweeping slider?
Yeah, it is unique. The pitch kind of dies down, doesn't have much, horizontal movement. Actually might have some, backward.
Yeah, it's like arm movement. Side. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd say looking at his arm slot, which is a lower slot, you'd expect him to, to get the outside of the ball and sweep a breaker, but it doesn't do that. So there's some uniqueness to the way that pitch moves, and it can, assume it helps its performance, because hitters don't get to see a pitch that does that often, especially when he's able to command it at an elite level and throw it at a high velocity. We like those characteristics and expect the pitch to perform pretty well here too.
I feel like we could do this whole pod on Imai, because I have like a lot of questions about him in general. But something you mentioned a little bit earlier is the acclimation process from NPB to MLB. And that's something that, and I mean, this was made a big deal of when you guys signed him. Like, you guys have not, this is a first for the Astros organization. Like, he is believed to be the first player to ever come straight from NPB to play for the Astros. Obviously, with a pitcher who he pitched every fifth day in NPB, you come here, you guys are going to open in a 6-man, but there could be times this year where he pitches every fourth day. How have you, as a pitching coach, I'm going to presume that this is something you've never had to do hands-on either, right? Like, assimilate a guy from NPB to MLB.
Well, it's similar to acquiring a college pitcher in the draft. And you tend to want to go more conservative at first while they get acclimated to professional baseball and are pitching on a more dense game schedule. So you'd want to, lower volume, lower pitch counts, lower innings totals as they get used to pitching every fifth or sixth day as opposed to every seventh day. And, it's not all too, different from what the NPB schedule is. But I'll just say that, Tatsuya is not a 19-year-old or 20-year-old college player either. He's a 27-year-old, elite athlete. And, we're going to listen to him and get his subjective feedback and kind of make, sound decisions as best we can as we get to know him and get ready for the season.
The one thing and again, this is talking to other people that have watched him pitch. This is talking to maybe scouts and other people in the industry. The one thing that keeps coming up about him is the fastball. Is maybe that the fastball is a little straight. Maybe that it maybe doesn't have the characteristics that maybe just jump off of video or analytics wise. I guess as you've looked at his fastball and as you've looked at the characteristics of that pitch, Where do you think it is, and how do you think it could play at the big league level?
I mean, he's got elite velocity. It's mid to upper 90s. He throws it in the zone. Maybe there's some areas of the zone he could target a little more effectively and efficiently to help it play up. But we don't have any. We don't think it's a short fastball. We think it's a good fastball that will be able to play, and especially in conjunction with his slider, which is unique. He throws a changeup and a split. He has a curveball that he mixes in as well. We think that the fastball will be able to do its job and play just fine in his arsenal.
So when the Astros are acquiring somebody and you're talking to them for the first time and you're kind of digesting what they have versus what you think you can help them improve, how do you balance just letting them know, okay, here's what you do well versus here's what we're going to do? I guess how soon into the conversation are you letting them know that they throw a sinker now, even if they don't know it?
It's something that we usually would bring up in a more formal setting, typically during spring training. We do this every year with every pitcher. Have some type of performance review and then some type of roadmap for the work in spring training and the work during the early parts of the season that we think can drive performance positively. And it's never we're not pounding the table and saying you need to do this. We also realize that these guys need to be comfortable with the pitches that they throw and when they throw them. But we suggest things and then get their feedback and go from there. These type of things, like I mentioned, we want it to be in a more formal setting with some bells and whistles, maybe a buttoned up presentation, some not just me talking at somebody, get some of the high level smart guys in the room as well. And it's a back and forth, and it's something that we do, like I said, with everybody, every spring training, and then and go from there, start the conversation and go from there.
Speaking of sinkers, another guy that we've had on the pod this offseason, Mike Burrows, another new member of your rotation. He made it very clear that he has a sinker. He has a sinker and he wants to throw it more. It is something that he was working at toward the end of his tenure with the Pirates last season. I get more broadly than just the sinker stuff. What about Mike Burrows? You guys saw him firsthand last year. He pitched against you guys at PNC Park as a member of the Pirates. What about Mike Burrows excites you? And this is a guy that's a young pitcher that's still kind of maybe learning his way in the big leagues, hasn't been in the big leagues that long. Kind of where do you think maybe there are steps for development and growth, and what excites you the most about Mike Burrows?
Yeah, another good acquisition this offseason. Feel really strongly about Mike. He got kind of on the map and on the scene in the big leagues last year and had some success. Did add a sinker and it performed pretty well. And we are going to ask him to throw it some, and he's on board with that for sure. But he's a kind of a high energy righty, throws some hard fastballs, has a hard slider, really good curveball. The changeup is probably his best pitch. We feel like a sinker could play up and help his other stuff play up. All we saw with Hunter Brown the last couple of years. But it's a really high ceiling arm that we feel real good about.
When you've got a guy like Burrows who has, like you mentioned, the changeup is elite. I mean, he is very, very good with the changeup. Hitters had almost no success. They hit 147 on his changeup last year, and he threw it 24% of the time. When you have a guy like that got hit around on the primary stuff, but you've got good secondary stuff, what is the process for? Is it increasing the usage of that secondary stuff specifically? Is it tweaking the fastball so that it can play better off a changeup? Like how do you take something that's already very successful a quarter of the time and try to keep that, for every pitch?
Well, that's the name of the game is trying to find the recipe for success. The simple thing is, hey, just throw the pitch more. But there's going to be some upper bound, some threshold where it's going to lose its effectiveness, and you're going to have to find that area. I think with Mike, he definitely could probably throw his changeup a little bit more, but we think that maybe throwing his sinker a little more could help his other stuff too. There's some things he's working on with his slider that might allow it to play up. So, we feel good about Mike's overall repertoire, and the small things that he's doing to shore it up coming into camp. Excited to see him in person. I know he's been living, training up in the Northeast this offseason. We've had some good conversations, and pumped to get working with him next week down in West Palm.
I mean, I watched Chris Davinsky go to an all-star game throwing a changeup every pitch. So, it works sometimes. So,
yes, it does. Tommy Canley, 90% changeups worked in the show for a long time too.
Did you reach out to Strami at all about Mike Burrows?
Yeah, we got great feedback from Strami and others within the Pittsburgh organization about Mike. Love the guy, love the competitiveness, the work ethic. We had all positive feedback about him.
It would seem to me, I'm just a lowly reporter. I just project these things, but it would seem to me you're going to go into spring training with 4 rotation spots that are pretty set in stone. Hunter Brown, we will talk about Hunter Brown. Don't worry. I know we're 20 minutes into this and we haven't talked about Hunter. We'll talk about Hunter. Don't worry. But you've got Hunter, you've got Christian Javier, you've got Tatsuya Imai, and you've got Mike Burrows. That would seem to be the 4 that, you could probably say right now have pretty firm hold on a rotation spot. Joe has been pretty forthright that you guys are going to open the season in a 6-man rotation. So that would leave 2 spots kind of back there. There's a lot of names, and one thing Dana did this winter is he gave you a lot of options. He gave you a lot of depth, and he gave you a lot of guys that are going to be vying for that spot. Josh, it could be one of the most fierce competitions, I'd think, in my time covering the team. I can't remember going into spring with a competition like this for the final 2 rotation spots. I guess, how exciting is that for you that you guys have a lot of different guys that could, if they pitch well, they could crack the rotation, and kind of how do you size that up? How do you size those 2 open spots up, as a week before you get to West Palm?
It always feels good to have pitching depth and competition during camp, for sure. A lot of guys that we feel good about. We got Spencer Arrighetti, finished the season on the injured list, but he's got dynamite stuff that we've seen play at the major league level before. AJ Blueball, finished the season with 20 scoreless innings. Was really dynamite for us down the stretch. Jason Alexander really held things together like glue last year, and will be in there pitching. You got Lance McCullers, who's been a huge member of this organization and it's got great stuff if it's on. We got tons of good arms. We acquired another guy from the Asian market in Ryan Weiss, who's a big physical righty that he came in during FanFest week and threw for us. He's got a super unique split changeup thing that he commands pretty well, and he's a big physical guy. Like I said, we got Nate Pearson, who we acquired early in the offseason. He'll be on the mend from a little elbow thing, but he'll be stretched out as a starter during camp. A ton of guys to feel good about. I didn't even probably touch on all of them there, but it's good to have depth, and it's a good group to have compete during spring.
So you're going to have all of these guys stretched out and kind of thinking in that mind frame of starting pitching, but you also know that some of those guys are probably going to play some roles in the bullpen, in addition to AAA starting and keeping stretched out and all of that kind of stuff. How does that change how you're approaching with them throughout the spring training? When do you kind of know, okay, this person's probably not going to be in the rotation? Does it change the way that you're approaching them as a coach, or the way that they're approaching getting ready for the season if they think they're going to be a starter versus a reliever?
Yeah, it's a big thing for a pitcher to know what role they're preparing for. Having guys that have the flexibility to change on a dime due to circumstance is huge for me, because you do need to make that choice. Hey, we got to get you ready for a reliever. We might need you to throw 3 out of the next 6 or 7 days to make sure that you're bouncing back and can handle that once the season ends up. So it's a math problem. You kind of run out of time as you get deeper into camp, and having a guy be on a starter schedule all spring and then say, hey, you're just going to the bullpen, that's fine on paper, but we have to treat that a little differently once opening day comes. We can't just use him as a traditional reliever if that's the case. The body's probably not going to be used to it and not ready to bounce back after an outing as a guy who's been training as a reliever would. So, there are things that we need to think about, and there is a decision point where it would be nice to know, hey, this guy's, we're going to transition you to more of a bullpen role for the last X amount of days of camp, and that's what you're, looking at your role for the start of the season, so we can prepare them that way. Might not be given that opportunity to make that decision when appropriate, but we'd like to have an idea and transition guys and give them some runway.
And as Tyler and I have talked about on previous pods, because you guys are opening in a 6-man rotation, and because, there's a lot of games and a lot of days early in the season, and there's going to be guys even in your rotation that maybe their first or second time through the rotation may not be stretched out to 95 to 105 pitches yet. It's going to reinforce the importance of, having swing guys in the bullpen, maybe doing some piggyback starts or some design tandem starts that first run or two through the rotation. So I guess in that vein, like, how vital could guys like Blue Ball, who has done it before, who has been the back end of a tandem start before, or, Ryan Weiss, if maybe there's not a spot in the rotation for him, he can do that out of the bullpen. You look at Spencer Arrighetti has done that before in the minor leagues. Like, how valuable will that role be, especially early in the season?
Yeah, I mean, it could play huge. We're going to get to camp and get everybody kind of going, and we'll line up what we think is the best way to get through the games. But we're starting with a 7-game homestand. We got to pitch at least 9 innings in each one of those games. We got to figure out who's going to do it. Then we go on a road trip, and there's a couple off days sprinkled in there that should provide some reprieve. But then we have 13 games in a row, and it's going to kind of force our hand a little bit on how we deploy guys. But we'll sit down, put our heads together, pick up the pieces after spring training, so to speak, and line the guys up as best we can.
All right. 27 minutes in, we're going to mention the reigning Cy Young finalist and the unquestioned ace of your staff, Hunter Brown. We talked about it on the pod, Josh, earlier this season, but I think when he went out in his first start of the year against the Mets, and this is just ingrained in my mind, I think it was Lindor, Soto, and Alonso he faced, and it was 99. Like, it was electric, 99. Like, my jaw was on the table. Like, I did not know that was in there. I did not know that was coming. Like, when you saw that, was it just like, oh man, like, this kid's in for a pretty special season? I know you had probably thought it in spring training, but to see that first inning against those hitters, were you as kind of just eyes wide as we were, and just how did that maybe set the tone for the season that Hunter had?
Yeah, I mean, it was an electric start to his season. He had a pretty good spring. We've had high hopes and thoughts of what his performance would be going back, 4 years or so. But to see that it was like oh man, here we go. Unfortunate, he carved a perfect cutter up and into Soto, and he got the barrel to it and hit a homer. It kind of dragged the outing a little bit for him, but yeah, it was a good first one. Again, I don't want to see him throwing 99 in spring training. I think we'll ease into his spring training build up and get rolling there, but expecting big things from Hunter. He's been here in Houston since the second week of January and been working out here, and things have looked great, and we're excited to get started again.
This is going to sound like a dumb question for a guy that just had the season that he had and was unquestionably one of the best pitchers in the American League. Where can he get better? Because you hear ball players all the time, even like the best of the best, even like the Ohtanis and the Judges of the world say, like, I can always be better. I can always get that little bit better. Where can he get better? Where can there be some evolution, even if it's small, kind of minute, granular things?
Yeah, there's some small, minute, granular things that we think he could tackle, and he agrees that can help him maybe miss some more bats against right-handed hitters. They can maybe drive the count a little more in his favor against lefties. We'd expect a guy with his stuff to strike out more guys, probably. Now he's really hard dominant with the 4-seam, 2-seam mix, so that's going to lend a little bit more contact. But just some small things that we think he can shore up and move the needle a little bit. But I think you would ask everybody here in the office and in the clubhouse if we could just dial up a repeat of the performance, we would take it, and we would be all very happy about it.
I think the thing that's also been impressive, Josh, and we've discussed this a little bit, he is now, this is 3 years in a row that he has reset his career high in innings pitched. Like, he keeps increasing workload, and it doesn't look like it's really wearing on him much. I mean, late in the season last year, he was as dominant late in, as you guys were clawing for a playoff spot, as he was at the beginning of the year. Does that just speak to just the conditioning that he is in, or what do you attribute the fact that, as there's been so much concern around the sport workload wise and not wanting to do that, you guys have been successful with each year this guy throwing more and more and him coming out of it healthy and still dominant late into the year?
Yeah, I mean, he's built a little different than most guys. He's thick, he's strong, he's diesel, and he's handled the work. He sets his sights out on getting some bulk innings, and he wants to get to 200 and wants to be the guy and wants to do all those things. And that's step one, is to have a guy that wants to do it and wants to take on the workload. And he does put in the work and does a great job with our strength staff and staying on top of things in the training room. And he's got a good process about his routine. And I think all the guys have their own certain ways about things, but for him, what he does really gets him ready to post.
So we briefly mentioned Christian Javier earlier. Obviously, coming back from injury last year, was really just more about, are you healthy? Can you come back? And so, I mean, it was obviously just great to see him back on a mound and, getting through starts. What do you expect from him this season after coming off the injuries and, really hasn't played a full season since 2023? What are the expectations? Is there innings limits? But I mean, what are you kind of expecting of him from this season?
I mean, it was, like you mentioned, great to see him get back out there and compete on a major league field. We saw stuff kind of tick back up closer to pre-injury levels. Expect him to be a little finer, maybe get closer to what we saw in 2022 when El Reptil was dominant. But we're gonna see the good Invisa fastball from him, a sweeper, the same stuff, the changeup, which was added in 23, is still a big piece and something that we think he can lean on. He's been throwing in the Dominican. He's feeling good. We expect a full workload from Christian and are excited to get him going again in spring.
Quickly to your bullpen, where you have to feel excellent about the back end. Brian Abreu as your setup guy, Josh Hader as your closer. Obviously those roles can flip on any day if you need, but you feel great about those two guys. And I think that was also the case last year. Going into last year, and there was a lot of uncertainty, I guess, from us and from people that cover the team going into camp, of just like, who's going to get the ball to the back end. And then you guys just kind of answered the questions with a bunch of, quite frankly, guys that were not on my radar, guys that, in our eyes, guys that were kind of just, or guys in AAA that really took the next step. I'm thinking of Brian King, Stephen Okert, Caleb Ort, who no longer obviously had to get off the roster as part of the moves this year. But as you look at the middle of the bullpen going in the spring this year, where do you give us some guys that you think could comprise maybe that bridge to Abreu and Hader, and maybe how important they're going to be? Because Joe has been pretty forthright that he wants to stay away from 4 outs from Brian Abreu in April and May, and the same with Josh Hader, who had the injury to end last year. Kind of who are going to be those guys that absorb a lot of those leverage outs, maybe between the 6th and the 7th and the 5th inning?
Yeah, we saw, last year a trifecta of lefties that were just super good for us, and Steve Okert, Bennett Sousa, and Brian King. They're all back, and expect them to repeat their performance. It's gonna be hard to improve upon it. We feel real good about that group. We acquired Daniel De Los Santos last year, and he pitched some really big innings for us in July, August, September. He'll be back. We had a Rule 5 pick from the Cincinnati organization, Rodri Munoz, who's got a really unique, interesting slider. He throws pretty hard, and we'll see what it looks like in camp when he gets in there. Jaden Murray, who's been working out here in Houston, was added to the roster last year and was also pretty dynamite for us down the stretch. He'll get a crack at some things there. Some of those guys that we mentioned as starting options might fall to a bullpen role if we deem that necessary, and they'd all be ready. All those guys were mentioned earlier. We have some some non-roster invite guys that are interesting and exciting. Peter Lambert coming back. It's got a lengthy major league track record, and then pitched in Japan last year. He'll be back on a minor league deal. Cody Bolton was a guy that we acquired end of last year. He finished the season in Sugar Land. He'll be in camp as an NRI. We got some guys internally that pitched well in Michael Knorr, Hudson Leach, Limber Santa. We saw Logan Van Wy last year. He was taken off the 40-man roster in the offseason, but is back and he'll be in camp. So we got a pretty good group of guys that we feel good about. The last few years we've seen some guys that are not on the radar come in and really perform and make their way on our team. We saw Luis Contreras a couple years ago. We had Steve Okert last year just come in and really shine during spring and earn a role and pitch some meaningful innings for us. So, we feel good about the group we have. They're going to have to do it, going to have to perform during camp, but we expect good things.
Tyler won't ask it, so I'll ask it. He's a big AJ Blueball guy. Tyler really likes AJ Blueball. He is a starter in every sense. He's part of the AAA rotation, had made his major league debut as a starter, has made some traditional starts. But we saw him last year come out of the bullpen, and when he was able to run it up a little bit, he got a little extra juice on it. When he knew he had little short spurts, like the stuff really, really ticked up. With the understanding that, like we talked about earlier, everyone in that group is probably going to be stretched out in camp, and then you guys make some decisions. But maybe for the long term with AJ Blueball, kind of where do you think he profiles best?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the player, you look at the body, the long leanness, the stuff, the dots. Like he's a starting pitcher, but if team need requires it, he's shown that he can be a reliever, and the stuff was great last year in September. It was dynamite to see him come up and have success, especially his major league debut. He threw the ball so well, and was really dragged by like the last batter he faced was a Crawford box grand slam on an executed slider. It was like, oh man, it was a tough one to feel. I'm glad he was able to get back to the big leagues last year and find some success, because he is a great kid, somebody to root for. I'd expect he's gonna play a role on our team this year. Whatever role that is will be determined, but I expect big things from AJ, whether that's as a starting pitcher or a reliever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chandler's a hater. I don't know why. It's very rude of him. Part of it is because I have a very soft spot in my heart for Brad Peacock, and Blue Ball reminds me a lot of him. Threw 98 changeups last year, did not give up a hit on one. It's pretty good. So I'm sure he'll find a spot somewhere.
Yeah.
Real quick before we let you go, because everyone loves prospects, I think the one pitching prospect internally from you guys that I think draws a lot of attention is Miguel Ulloa, who was on the 40-man, who got protected. He's on the 40-man roster now, so we'll be in camp in big league camp. Last year in big league camp, maybe struggled a little bit to find the strike zone, and that's kind of been the knock on him a little bit, is that he does not throw a ton of strikes, but the stuff's elite. What are you expecting to see from Miguel Ulloa maybe in his second big league camp? Maybe his mind's at ease a little bit more. He's maybe not going to be overthrowing as much. Kind of, what do you expect to see from him, and what future do you think he has?
Yeah, really special fastball, similar career arc to Christian Javier in the minor leagues. Really tough to hit, really good fastball, gets swings and misses. Maybe a little bit erratic with his command. We need to see that improve a little bit. He's aware. He's making some changes. They made some changes during the season. Sean Buchanan, our AAA pitching coach, and him, cleaned some things up second half of the year, and we saw some improvement. Expect him to hit the ground running and maybe be a little more comfortable in a big league camp environment. I'd expect him to pitch on a starter schedule, but again, it's a guy that could profile as a reliever, depending on how things shake out and how things go. But he's got a special fastball. He's got some interesting secondary pitches, and the name of the game is to be able to command him and throw strikes and minimize the walks, and that'll allow him to have success. And we're going to work to improve that area.
There's the saying is there's no such thing as too much pitching. I think you guys proved that last year. Do you know off the top of your head how many guys you had throw more than 10 innings for you last year?
Oh man.
I know that
I would say like 27.
27 is exactly right. 27 guys threw 10 or more innings for the Astros last year.
So that's not even counting our best guy, which was
you lost your star reliever in Chas McCormick.
That's what I was going to say. Chas McCormick and Cesar Salazar, really, and Cooper Hummel. Not a great.
He got an inning in.
You got Sally back though, so hopefully you won't need him.
But that just goes to show it. I mean, as opening day roster is a snapshot, but there's 26 total players on that roster. You had 27 guys throw 10 or more innings last year, so it's not set in stone for sure.
Yeah.
Really the last one before we let you go, Josh. If I would have told you in 2018, when Framber Valdez comes to the big leagues and you lay your eyes on him and you get to see him that first year, if I would have told you this guy's going to be a $40 million a year pitcher in 2018, what would you have said?
I would have been flabbergasted. I wouldn't have had any words. It was amazing. Forever grateful for the things he did for the organization here. We go way back to Kissimmee, Florida, when he came over from the Dominican complex and I was in the minor league system. Tremendous worker. What a great pitcher. I'll be rooting for him when he's not pitched against us, and hope good things for Framber.
It's truly incredible. 2018, 2019, Framber was probably not. 2019, there was a case to be made. He was on the 40-man roster chopping block, and then in the next 5 seasons, had a 1.28 ERA plus in 973 innings and won a World Series clinching game for you guys. He embodies player development success, and Josh, you're a big part of that. Player development, pitching development. Framber is at the top of the list in terms of guys that you have developed and guys that you have nurtured through struggles early and things like that, but you've got a ton of those guys still on your roster, Javier, Hunter Brown, just to name a few. But we really appreciate this. This was great. I told you we'd keep you for 25 minutes and we kept you for 43, so that's my fault. Thank you again for taking time from Dyken Park to join us. And before, I know it's going to get busy as you get to West Palm, but this was great. We really appreciate you giving us some insight to a new look Astros pitching staff.
No problem. Thanks, guys. Nice talking to you.
As always, guys, you can follow me on X at Chandler_Room. You can follow Tyler at Tyler C. Stafford. Please rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well to get notified every time we post a new video. We will be back later this week with a more comprehensive preview, maybe of the offensive side, before we get to West Palm Beach. But until then, we will talk to you later.
La Grassa's always greener on the other side. Bye.